Okay, cool. You are tuning in to MOI Global with the podcast with no name currently. We have been talking to, I've been talking to clients about content marketing a lot, but that's not true. We've talked to clients consistently about content marketing for the last 10 years. It's been a big thing, but we wanted to figure out what's new in the world of content. And specifically today, we've got a guest on who's going to speak to us around content feedback and what that can mean for the business, for the marketing practice. So welcome, Matt Laybourn. For those who don't know, Matt is essentially entrepreneur number one in the UK right now, as far as I'm concerned. My own metrics, at least.
I'm not worried about that.
Matt launched nearly a decade ago now, an e-commerce business called Slim's Detailing, which was sat under the Morelli Group. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, you more or less took that from scratch and made it into a pretty big deal.
Yeah.
Within 2 years, that business had grown to 7 figures in annual revenue, delivering a net profit ahead of target, I do believe. I'm quoting you, link. And then we knew each other because you came to work at TMW Business, which sat in the Unlimited Group, and you went from a marketing strategist to head of performance marketing to digital performance director, a fairly meteoric rise as far as I'm concerned. But of course, for the last 2 years, and the reason we're here is you've spent that time prototyping, launching, scaling now as well, Rockee, which is a content feedback tool where you get very highly qualified feedback from verified audiences on the stuff you're actually putting out into the world. So, Matt, lovely to see you again, obviously. Why don't you start by telling us a little bit about Rockee?
Thanks. That's a really nice intro. It makes me feel like, first of all, I'm getting old now. And also I'm slightly tired. I've been busy. But yeah, it's Rockee was born out of a frustration I had, because I've spent my whole career in mostly digital marketing and strategy. And we had this frustration where clients would constantly ask, it's particularly B2B, how good is the content? How's the content performing? And then you go, okay, I'm going to jump into an analytics dashboard and I'm going to look at all these numbers. I'm going to try and work out what is performing and what isn't. And it's nonsense. Right. It's kind of nonsense. It's kind of this, you're trying to look into a mystic ball. You're a fortune teller and you look at all these numbers and go, engagement rate is high, but bounce rate is low, or this dwell time is this. And you're like, what does that mean? It doesn't mean anything. It doesn't particularly mean anything at all. And I was kind of like, this can't be just me. There can't be some sort of Nostradamus who can see into this that I'm not. So I started asking other marketers. You're one of those other marketers. I was like, how do you use it? Are you seeing something I'm not? And everyone was like, no, we're all doing this. We're all guessing. And do you know what? That word came back over and over again. Oh, we look at it, or we go on a hunch. We go on guesswork. We go on our best instincts as to what works. And I was just like, this is mad. We've got to find a better way. And this is essentially the idea for Rockee. My hypothesis is, if you actually want to understand sentiment and influence, you kind of need to ask the people you're talking to and go, have we done our job? Have we delivered on what we set out as an expectation? So Rockee is a feedback tool that also blends in analytics data as well, but it just gives you huge clarity as to the effectiveness of your content.
Awesome. Great summary. I remember that conversation that you said, and actually you're right, it just boiled down to a pretty vapid chat about Google Analytics. It's like, okay, I see what you're onto here. Cool. Okay. Well, I thought, look, you've been telling me about a few really interesting things that you've seen over the last 2 years in that journey, and I thought it'd be quite interesting if we could have a chat about them, look at some of the examples you've seen out there in terms of how content feedback is being used. I thought maybe we could start on, I know you talk a lot about the intent of an audience, right? So if you maybe can tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, the longer we've got into this journey, I think the first year of this was trying to work out how do we collect content feedback, what are the mechanisms that we use, and where does it sit within what we do in B2B marketing at the moment. And buyer behavior's changed so much as well in recent times, there's a shift away from things like gated content, more ungated stuff, giving away more stuff for free, and okay, how effective is all of that work? And we're still doing everything in stages of the user journey, like top of funnel, I'm trying to find out about a topic or a subject, I'm trying to self-educate, right down to product, solution, bottom of funnel stuff. So we've been trying to work out, okay, where do we get Rockee in that mix and how do we deliver on intent? And I think you can look at intent in two different ways. One is essentially, keyword intent. Depending on the type of keyword you're doing, you generally write a piece of content that's matched to it. So if it's top of funnel, like what is, ABM marketing, sure. You're trying to deliver on the intent of that. You're trying to solve that question. Okay, how does that align with that? And there's the other side of it, which is the title of the content, whether if you've come in via a different channel that's not search, for example, like what is the intent of this thing? Like I'll report into X and that. So like, what are you trying to deliver against that audience and how effectively are you trying to do it? So that's kind of the big thing that we've really been focusing on, is essentially closing that feedback loop up. So I've engaged with it, I've read it, have I delivered on the promise that I set out to the audience? And the simplest way that we do that is we collect a content rating. So really quick, like, did we do our job? Yes or no? Cool, we'll go and do that. You've all of a sudden got this clear feedback loop against different stages of the funnel, different stages of intent that you've got from your audience. You can go, okay, I think I've effectively done that. And it's a really quick way of working out where are the gaps? What are you missing? And obviously the other mechanisms we have there is, we recommend people collect audience insight as well. So you can start to figure out different segments. Who are you influencing? Who are you not influencing? And also the open text feedback box, which is a big thing that's been promoted by people like Refine Labs in terms of attribution modeling. Sure. We're saying do the same in content, because it all of a sudden gives you a huge amount of data you just weren't expecting, where it could be, this isn't what I was expecting, or you didn't include enough references, or this didn't seem credible enough, or whatever. And all of a sudden you've got, okay, I've got clear, shortened cycles to understand how effective my content is. Instead of waiting 3 months or 4 months looking at an analytics data dashboard and then going, I think it works, or I'm not too sure. You've now got, actually, sometimes in weeks you could be like, I really need to adjust this, or I need to optimize this, or I've got a particular audience that is starting to emerge as a key trend. So yeah, there's kind of a different layers of understanding what intent looks like depending on the audience and the way they got there, but there's different ways of collecting that feedback as well.
Sure. You mentioned gaps there as well. Like, what are some of the most interesting gaps you've seen your clients surfacing?
B2B is great for jumping straight to solution, bottom of funnel.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Buy the thing, which is interesting. That tends to be some of the biggest bits of feedback that we get, is we haven't delivered on the intent of the audience. Like I've got one really, really good example from one user who they did a new launch of a new product and solution, but they actually set up the expectation of the content as like, we're revolutionizing how to do this. I can't go into too much detail as I'll reveal who they are, but we're revolutionizing this part of the industry with our new way of doing things and our new theory and approach. So they set up a very high level expectation and theory behind it, and you land on there and they're just like, it was kind of like a chest beating exercise. We're the best at this. We're changing the world. And within 48 hours, they had about 10 or 15 bits of feedback on that content, because they drove a huge amount of traffic there straight away. And people were like, I have no idea what you're on about. Like, you haven't told me what the solution actually is. Like, you've kind of done this big exercise of creating all this drama and intrigue. You haven't actually told me what you're trying to, how do you deliver on that expectation? Which was really interesting. And I kind of got in touch with their CMO and I was like, you need to go in there. And actually, in this example, you do need to actually start delivering on what you said you were going to do. How are you changing this part of the industry? Like, have you got some videos? Have you got some other content which you can at least link to or provide a clear next stage of the customer journey? So there's all examples of kind of gaps that you get. And it is the most common thing is we're always trying to sell too quick. It's probably the biggest example, but nice little example there of how one user just completely misread the audience with what they set out to do.
That's powerful as well though, right? Because if you're the one in charge of content, product launch is a perfect example where everyone's super excited. Of course, we want to immediately talk to the product. And you're often that lone voice as the content marketer saying, cool, but there's still 4 other buyer jobs we also need to address here for this thing that no one's seen before. Let's do some of that as well. So if you've got actual feedback within 48 hours saying, where's the rest of my buyer journey, please? Not that everyone else is like that.
That's exactly what they was. But yeah, it's kind of those ones. I feel we've been on the side of that as well, where you're inside the organisation and you're having those debates, like what does this need to look like? And there's probably multiple stakeholders going into that piece of content and trying to deliver it, and there's different voices of opinion around the room. And you have to get internal feedback to validate and get things out there, but equally you've also got this really quick external like feedback loop going, hey, we didn't get it, we didn't understand it. And that was kind of like perhaps answering some people's internal arguments, and perhaps the others are not so happy with that. But equally, it was a clear point of clarity. We need to go and adjust now. Yeah. Like the message is wrong. We need to go and adjust and make a change. So that's, again, the fascinating thing with that is that could have been a content campaign that could have lasted for months and they'd have had no idea if it worked or not. Because our metric at B2B is leads. Everything is leads. That's all I care about. The reality is you're trying to introduce new content that's going to take time, energy, awareness. You've got to nail that message over and over again. And if on day one you're not getting it right, that's a real problem. And you're 3 months later going, where are all those leads coming? I thought they would have come in by now. We said we were going to change the market. Whereas you've now got that, like, okay, let's switch it up. We're not landing with. So, yeah, fascinating stuff.
That's the power to be a lot more iterative in content than maybe you've been able to before, right? Unless you're going to have a customer panel to look at all your content pieces before they go out. We just didn't have that mechanism.
Yeah. And you mentioned customer panel. I have heard of some audiences, some companies who do like kind of pre-releases with their content as well, which like I would actively encourage if you've got a way of doing that, especially if you're doing something really big. But equally, you need that real-time loop as well, because the audience is changing, the market's changing, priorities are changing. There could be huge macro environmental things where it's like, oh, budget's been wiped out. Like, is, I don't know, a piece of personalization software the solution? Probably not. You've got to change the way you're talking to the audience and not just hope that the campaign, hope it lands. Yeah. Big changes in the world, hope it lands. It's like you can't kind of just set a lot of it. So, yeah.
And you mentioned briefly that doing a bit of audience profiling as part of that, the Rockee platform. Like, what's that about? What do you do with that? What do you see clients doing with it?
So we originally did it on the hypothesis of one client's their web traffic, because they had huge volume, low conversion, and they didn't know who was on their site. I think it's like 80, 90, 100,000 users unique a month. And the hypothesis was like, I just don't think you're bringing in a lot of the right people. Your SEO team, like, this is the great thing about SEO. Like, I've brought in loads of traffic, done my job, great stuff. And you're like, okay, there is a lot of traffic there. Why aren't we converting? And the next thing marketers do is go, let's look at conversion software or tests and things like that. And that's a natural kind of moving up and down the funnel, trying to make things work better. But the hypothesis we had was like, I just don't think you're bringing in the right people. I think you're bringing in quite low level students, basically, who are trying to just do like research. So we essentially introduced that into Rockee to solve one client's problem, because I was like, you need to find out who you were appealing to. So that actually solved their problem. I mean, like, straight away, we're like, we were right. Like 40-50% of all traffic to your site is students who are doing research for college, university. But they also love your content, which is great. But like, probably not who you're trying to influence. But at that point, it was a case of, okay, we've actually landed on something here. Like, I think, well, we started splitting out how they find out more about their audience. So they are one of the first who went with understanding seniority and function. So they're like, okay, I want to know like what that split is of people who are in, I don't know, HR, ops, business, tech, whatever, and then how senior are they? So they now get really distinct trends. First of all, at a holistic level, and they go, look, we know 30% of the audience is the ideal ICP, their HR ops, and those types of people, and this kind of level of seniority. And then they can start to get really granular with that and go, well, I can go down to content and keyword level. Like, if that keyword brings in the highest, like the most celebrated piece of content that we got that gets 20,000 uniques a month, that's all students though. Like, so maybe let's not worry about that as much. But you can go down to that level where it's like, oh, who is reading that most important piece of content? Which part of the decision-making unit am I actually influencing? And it leads on to optimization possibilities where it's like, do you know what? I know this piece of content over here doesn't have the highest volume. It might be quite low ranking, but it gets high rating, but it's influencing the right people. Maybe we really need to work out how we push that up for SEO, because we're getting the right traffic. And I know I'm influencing people, so I can prioritize that. And conversely, low ranking, low rating content, you might be like, okay, we probably need to improve the quality of that. And one example we get quite a lot is some of the content is it's pitched too low for like, it's not senior enough.
Right.
It's solving very basic keyword questions, like what is X, what is the, it doesn't, for a senior decision maker, they're like, I know what that is. Like, you need to kind of do more. So there's different ways you can play with it. But the introduction of audience insights was a happy accident for the platform. But really, really useful use case.
And that ties into something we're going to talk about a bit later anyway, with that audience profiling piece, which is if we are going to move away from gated content, because obviously you're talking about SEO there, but if we think about all the money we spend on media, or at least with the lead forms, something like, hey, you can have in the function and the seniority questions so that you can tell that your channels are bringing in what they say they're bringing in when you set up your audience targeting. If we all move to ungated content all the time, we're potentially letting those channels off the hook in terms of audience deliverance. So having that, how many % of people leaving feedback and saying, yes, I am the audience that you paid money for, that's useful. That's coming in at a good time.
There's so much waste in media as well. Like depending on how good your agencies are and your internal team that are running that, most don't look beyond very simple like platform metrics, like from my paid media platform, and some basic landing page metrics. They don't care further down the funnel on attribution or influence. And those things are actually the most important thing to a business. And like the good thing that's happened in the last 5 years is more marketers are moving towards like RevOps and those kind of things. And like, okay, I'm spending a lot of money on this. I need this to actually work for me. And agencies need to adjust to that a lot better. And there's big discrepancies there. And you go, look, I don't know, let's say like a demand base or like an intent platform, that, and then you're sending hundreds of thousands of users onto those sites, and that traffic's expensive. Those platforms are expensive as well. You kind of want to know, like, okay, first of all, am I bringing the right people? Am I influencing them in the right way? And are they going on to make positive, engaged actions with my brand? And that's why I love tools like Dream Data and Hockey Stack that are new on the market, which give you like full funnel metrics, but equally like we're trying to do this middle bit, like, are we getting the right people and doing the right influence as well? So yeah, it's interesting, and it's a much better way of getting feedback loop for media agencies and media teams to go, well, look, this budget's not effective, or you need to change targeting, or whatever it may be.
Again, when we're talking about speed to feedback, you put dollar amount, pound amount on that when you're looking at how much you spend per day on media. If you look at how long it used to take you to get certain on you were right, reaching the right people, to getting some of that on that content form within 24 hours, that's really valuable.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You could see straight away and go, 40% of that audience is wrong, or it's not the right level of seniority.
The content.
Yeah. Also, that's the thing media agencies need to do is like, did you know what? The content's not landing. We're not comfortable sending that traffic to content that doesn't deliver for the audience. So it will, as much as you might get inflated value in the, click-through rates and engagement metrics from the media platform, the meaningful, like, are they actually engaging with it, is like, we need to make an adjustment. So, there's both sides of the coin. It's not just a way of attacking media agencies, which I would never advocate at all.
No. So you touch on the audience engaging with the content just then. So presumably, if I can leave feedback about this content, I can leave you feedback on whether it's actually presented to me in the right way, right? So that I can engage with it in a way that suits me. Is that something that your clients are using that for? Or?
Yeah, we get again, these are things that we weren't expecting around like content experience. Like I've got like a weird fascination with content experience. Like there's nothing.
When you say weird,
no, hang on a minute. I'll be careful where I'm going with this. No, it's when you like go to a page and you're like, oh, this is actually really well laid out. It's clearly like structured with maybe like some social proof. It's got like clear chapter stuff, and I'm like, okay, I want to quickly navigate to that bit. I don't want to do the standard SEO intro. What is X? And you're like, okay, I know what X is. I don't want to read that out. I just want to get to the bit where you actually tell me how to do things. So people who lay out their content really well and have images, videos, and things like that to tell that story, And we've had that quite a lot because this is again a really good B2B thing that we do. It's like we'll invest loads of time into the hero, like let's say like a webinar or like a big meaty piece of content. You're like, cool, I've made that. We put loads of energy into it. We've got good attendance, and now we'll publish it onto our site. And forevermore, people will come visit and sit there. They'll put their feet up and they'll watch for an hour or a webinar they've never heard of. And it's like, this isn't going to happen. That's not how people behave.
You don't have hot chocolate.
Yeah.
Thursdays.
So I call in the wife and I'm like, let's get a webinar on. Come on. I've got some marshmallows. Let's do it. But like that's so like there's a really common one, which was one of our clients driving a lot of media into this webinar because they're moving away from gated to ungated. Like, well, this is how you do it, and it's just a webinar on a page. So people are like leaving feedback, going, "I didn't watch this because it was an hour, and I just wanted to be able to skip to the bit that was interesting." So the obvious feedback on that is, okay, get a transcript up. Like if you can get a copywriter to go through and make it a little bit more tighter, and so it's not word for word. Have clear categorization. Like if someone's like, I really want to skip to the bit where you talk about that, just give them that. And they can do that either in video or they can do it as a written piece. It's great for your SEO at the same time. So if you actually spend an extra 3 hours on that piece of content, you've actually got something that will live there, get more traffic and get more engagement. And it's like really simple feedback loops like that are like, oh yeah, we should just do that a little bit better. And all of a sudden we're giving people a really good experience. So yeah, that's kind of nice. Well, but a lot of the stuff we get is, like people want visual stuff too. Like, can you show me a diagram? Like, I'd have liked to have seen how this works. And sometimes you've just got big, long lumps of text, which can be beautifully written, but we are competing with social media, LinkedIn feeds, and emails, Slack boxes, and things like that. And I'm competing with so many alerts for attention. You can't just serve up 10 paragraphs and hope someone's going to tuck in, or a webinar for 1 hour. So break it up and improve the experience, bring in visual cues, make clear categorization, and give also social proof. Like a perfect site that does this, the Hrefs blog. So when you land on it, it's like the amount of people that have viewed this blog, like how well it ranks. I don't know why they tell us that, but it's kind of interesting. And also like how many times it's been shared and stuff. And you're like, okay, this is giving me confidence in the credibility of what this is. And not enough brands do that. And you're like, well, this is, especially as we move away from gated, like you're competing, you've got to build trust. So yeah.
So that's just little subconscious social proof pieces that aren't even necessarily registering at the forefront. But do you think that makes a difference then?
Yes, I think it does. And it's something that B2C has done subconsciously to us for years. You're going on a website and let's say you're shopping for a new pair of trainers and you visit 2 or 3 sites and you found the perfect one and you're like, oh, which one do I pick? That one has the most reviews, positive feedback from people who are like me. That one gets the money. B2B, why does B2B need to be any different? Like you're competing for people's attention. If you can bring in proof from your users that you deliver a good experience, then absolutely go and do it. Like it's one of those harder tangible to measure things. B2B buying cycles are so long, I can't be like my conversion rate's gone up 10% because I just don't think it will do that. But I think you're going back to the intangible of experience. Like I think I'm going to give people a better thing, and you can use like ratings that you get on the content as a way of measuring that, but it is a bit harder than e-commerce to measure.
Okay, cool. So you've sort of circled around this a couple of times, the whole gated ungated thing, at the risk of adding to the noise in this space. What's your take, Matt? Gate, ungate, double gate?
So it's got to be right for your business. There are still some businesses that are allegedly saying, do you know what, we can put in enough money at the top and accept the conversion from MQL to opportunity for the size of opportunity to go, it's still giving us ROI. And you're like, okay, that's fine. Like you've got to keep an eye on that mechanism. What I would kind of recommend doing 2 things. Like I personally, like from a user experience, I wouldn't do it because I think we've really hurt the trust of our audiences. So gated content has been everywhere for a decade now, and users know what happens when they fill out a form. So I've got the annoying emails that are going to immediately like chase me on it. I'm going to probably have a BDR ring me. It might be in an hour or two. How would you get on with the report? I'm like, I don't know. I read 2 pages, I skimmed it, and then I deleted it and put it in a trash can.
It's webinar night with the wife tonight.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, well, we're going to tuck into that later over a curry. So you've got that. So you've started to eliminate trust because it put people off filling out forms. Like, I want to read this thing, but I know I'm going to get hounded for it, and I'm not ready yet. So, so I want to keep that like sentiment point and like stage of the journey, because quite often getting content is top of funnel, hilariously, and then we try and sell people immediately who are like, I was just trying to find out about a thing. So there's 2 things that I recommend that people do. One is look at all the sources of people that have filled out gated content and how many of them go to opportunity at the moment. That is the biggest metric to look at. How many of them are not MQL, not SQL, like how many of them are getting quoted, and what is the size of the prize at the bottom of it. If you're still seeing like acceptable ratios, that's fine. Like I did this example for a tech company last year, and they were going down each year. At one point they were like 8 or 9%, and now they're at like 3 or 4%. So their media budget's just not doing as much legwork as it should do. And it's like, okay, you kind of need to cut the cord here. It doesn't work anymore. So you've got that, but that argument is really hard to have for marketers with senior leaders, because senior leaders are like, well, that's how we get leads, and we like leads. And quite often we will like, and there may be some truth in this, and we'll blame how we do the system in the middle. Like, oh, maybe we're not good enough at nurturing. Maybe the sales team aren't hard enough on chasing it. And that is still the conversation people are having. So I proffer that you need a second piece of evidence, and that is sentiment of the audience. So one is, I've got the hard fact of this is driving less revenue than it ever did before. We can debate that all day long. The second part of that is understand where your audience actually is. So I would get, I know this sounds like a plug again, but I would get feedback from your audience who are reading gated content and just ask them very simple things like, where are you in your journey? Are you researching? Are you, you could even ask things like, what part of, are you a buyer? Are you an influencer in a decision maker unit? And all of a sudden you've got some clear new data points, which is like, actually these people they might be far more top of funnel. They're researching on behalf of someone who actually is the budget holder.
So don't get that topic.
Yeah, and as much as we've got 1,000 leads and we're excited by that, I don't know, you could probably eliminate a huge amount of them and go, we're actually collecting bad leads. And I've got proof of both the actual revenue metrics, and I've also got sentiment to go, well, this is who we're attracting. How long do we want to keep chasing a very narrow funnel when the buyer journey is so much more complex? There's more touch points, there's more people researching, there's more people in the decision-making unit, and we've just been trying to push them down this really narrow thing over here when they're all over our website over there. So, but I think marketers need 2 pieces of evidence to start to have that influence with the leadership team and go, look, it's time. It worked for a while, but the buyer's changed. We need to move on. So you need hard facts to make that case. It's not an argument you can win overnight.
Yeah, I think you give me things to think about there in terms of like those 2 evidence points. That's really nice. It's also really refreshing to hear someone say, do what works for your business and not worry about that. Being overly binary about it. And like, we don't have to take one strategy or the other in exclusion. Like within the business, we can choose to do different things in different areas. And I think, like you say, collecting feedback on different topics, different types of content, that's really interesting, because that allows you to be much more nuanced in what you try gating and try on gating, but with rationale, hypothesis, and evidence behind it.
Yeah. And I had a really good reminder from a client I've been working with, where I was like, you guys, you need to cut out the content syndication. So I was looking at the attribution modeling. They just got a big, huge pile of MQLs, and then only a very small amount of them convert to revenue. I was like, look, it's not good money. And she actually went, well, to be honest, for the amount of money I put into content syndication, I'm buying those at like 40, 50 quid a lead. I don't mind that pain of a very small amount of them that actually come to opportunity, because I know if I get 2 or 3% of them go to opportunity, our average contact value is 6 figures. I've made my money back. So it looks painful from one lens, but when you look at it from a revenue lens, it works. You're like, okay, it's kind of a wonky looking funnel, but it does its job.
No, fair enough. I mean, so much of that comes down to that lifetime customer value though, right? You can tolerate that super chunky acquisition cost if you know they're going to stick around for 15 years. If they're going to be out the door in 4 months because you've got other challenges in business, that's something that you need to be adaptable to in marketing as well, right? If all of a sudden, for whatever reason, you might see changes in the business, that's pretty widespread at the minute. You know, you suddenly have delivery issues and your lifetime tenure with the customer goes down from 15 years to 2. Marketing can't just do the same thing in isolation. We need to then look at our funnel. We need to look at that pretty quickly. So yeah, it's interesting space and not as simple as people make out on LinkedIn either.
Yeah, it's good click content. It's good bait to be like, let's do this, let's turn that off immediately. But you've got to look at the full picture. Yeah. And lifetime value is such a good metric that I completely missed off of that. But if your clients generally stick around for 5 to 10 years and you had to get them via a method that's not quite as fashionable as it used to be, sure.
Yeah.
You've done your job. It doesn't matter.
Okay, cool. So are there any other ways that you've been seeing people use this kind of content feedback mechanism? So account-based marketing, for example, springs to mind. Have you experimented with that?
Yeah, so this has been an interesting one because Rockee relies on volume. It relies on lots of people coming to pages, giving feedback. So you can build a statistical sample. So first of all, great for SEO teams, great for web pages and stuff like that. And then the challenge has come in, we had one agency like, we want to use this on ABM. And I'm like, I'm slightly worried because I'm like, I don't know what you're going to get. But all of a sudden, you start to kind of think about let's talk through what your campaign looks like. You're driving a very small audience, maybe 50 to 100 people to a very set of dedicated, highly personalized pages. And in this particular program, this agency is like, we've completely built custom messaging for this one client. And our job is just to convert this one account because the value of it is probably beyond 7 figures. So if we get it right, we're doing it right. And all the traditional ABM planning, like the biggest challenge ABM marketers have is insight. How do we know what the audience wants, particularly this one account? So all those macro environmental things that we love to talk about, like how does it affect that one brand and what's the message and what priorities of them? So we're using all these intent platforms, we're using all these insight tools, we're like scrolling through people's Twitter feeds, LinkedIn feeds, hoping to find like one golden nugget of, we really want to prioritize connectivity in 2024, and you're like, let's do it. But it's not as simple as that because no one gives that information away. So we kind of said, well, we think we've got a good angle on the content, like we've got a particular set of messaging and a pain point that we think that will interest them, but let's test that out. Let's just have one of the Rockee widgets there, but customize it to basically be like, first of all, is this the challenge? What is the challenge area that you have at the moment? So first of all, how did you rate the content? Like, okay, this was good, bad, medium. But then just going into a little bit of depth, like, is this an area that you're looking to solve at the moment? Or are there other areas of interest in your business that we could be talking to you about? And you leave it as you're not trying to sell them. You're just basically like, you're here and hopefully you've enjoyed the experience. What could we make a better experience for you? That is all you're doing in that example. But all of a sudden, you start to get 1 or 2 bits of feedback from actually that's like, the CTO at that brand who we've been desperate to get in touch with, who hasn't sent us a single email or read a single thing that we've done, and is now saying, actually, I kind of want to talk, I'd like to see more stuff you do about connectivity, or I'd like to see things like that, or this topic was exactly right for what I wanted. 1 or 2 bits of feedback could be like, do you know what, we've now got a signal that we didn't have, which is confirmed from a valid source, but is exactly the direction maybe we need to go in. And I can go back to sales and go, do you know what, get that case study which talks about this, or go and get that piece of content which talks about that, and let's have a slightly different conversation, because I think we found something in that account that we didn't know about. So very simple, like you're not relying on volume and metrics, but if you can get one piece of insight, the reward is massive, and it can pivot the way we change it. And again, the classic example with ABM, I could be running that campaign for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. And again, I'm looking at analytics data and go, 100 people visited the page. Well, then what do I do with it? They sat there for 2 minutes. Then they bounced. That was it. And then you got that on your report. You
Looking forward to delivering the report.
Yeah. Very good report, guys. You know, that means nothing. The sales team don't care about your dwell time. I'm sorry.
I love this for those really big strategic accounts. I'm thinking of clients in the past where they might have been a customer for the last 12 years. You know, they've got really deep relationships in certain areas of that business, and the ABM programs are all around getting into new departments, new operating countries within these behemoth accounts. And for the amount of time and effort and resource and planning that goes into creating a customer landing page where you surface, like you say, all this lovely messaging, there's different pieces of content, you've got the account manager's video in there, which great stuff, for the sake of adding in a little widget just to collect. And like you say, it might be one piece of feedback every 6 months, but that might be a super valuable piece of feedback for a page that you know is going to continue to exist for the next 3-4 years, because they're going to carry on being an account. You'll have objectives against it as a team. Why not create, collect a bit of feedback on the content? It's not going to annoy them, because if they don't want to do it.
It all comes, like, I use intent too much as well. We're watching too many of the LinkedIn videos that talk about it, but like, it does come back to first party intent. Like, as more and more things become convoluted and third party cookies, everything is disappearing. If I can find a signal that is something I can really narrow in on, like emails and opens and clicks and things like that don't really mean anything. It just means you did a catchy subject line. That's not intent. That means you hook someone into reading a thing very temporarily, or a click-through rate means you did a good hook on your social ad. If I've actually got intent, which is, this was good, I like this, send me more of that, that's intent. Like, and it's harder and harder for marketers to collect first-party intent now, and we're looking at alternatives. And if you can get a signal from your audience that's direct rather than purchased or through someone else, then it's significantly more valuable to work with.
I do think on those named accounts, those audiences of one account, the trade-off there is going to be respecting the type of feedback. If it is, I would have actually liked to do some research on enterprise 5G connectivity, whatever it is. It's respecting that they said, I would like to do some research, not I would like to purchase now, please.
Yeah.
Just because we, like you say, the CTO landed and leaving that feedback, that's not necessarily the invitation to sell. So that would be the kind of trust exercise you'd go through as it's adjusted to collect some customer feedback.
Yeah, and deal cycles are, what I said before, it's so much more complex. It's a lot longer. It's a lot harder. Like, all the sales teams are saying it. In January, there was a really good report I read from Hockey Stack. January, February are actually the worst months of the year for selling anything at the moment. So we have to be patient, and like, as much as these can be good signals, it's not a right, get on the phone, ring them. It's no, you've done a good job here, and like, work on it, use it in context. Don't just jump the gun.
Makes sense. Anything else, Matt? Any other interesting things you've seen clients do?
I suppose the last thing that I this is one of the ones where, like, all the rules of a startup is find a problem that people have and give them a solution. And you can't keep getting feedback as you do it. And you're like, there's a problem here, there's a problem there. Like, okay, we'll build that new part into the platform, we'll do that. So we've been doing a lot of that, and that's been really interesting. And then there's this like devil on my shoulder, which is like, I really want people to do this, but no one wants to do it yet. And
what is it? Never say.
So I see how well B2C does. Like, I kind of touched on it a bit, but social proof and building trust. I think B2B has a huge trust problem and a huge problem with competition for attention. And I'm desperately trying to get people to do two things. One is use more social proof in the experience of their page, which I kind of covered off, because I think that has difficult to measure but very nice benefits of, like, we make great content, our audience loves it, they look like you, they're engaging with it, and that's really interesting. But the other thing I think you could be doing with a lot of people who are using Rockee are collecting really valuable first-party data, like going, this is great content, this really solved my problem. That social proof could easily be going into ads. It could be like going into social media assets. Like, you're like, do you know what? We've released a new report and HR teams are absolutely loving it, or tech teams are absolutely loving it. Here's a quote from one of our users who have read it. very similar to how like people like Trustpilot and Reviews.io have now made kind of social content creation elements of their platforms, where you not only measuring and understanding what performance looks like and optimizing, but you're using it as a way of promoting things as well. So I'm like, no one's asked for this, but I'm like, trust me, I think this will be so valuable that you actually start building trust in your brand in a slightly different way with that treasure chest of first party feedback that you're getting.
That's super interesting. I'm imagining like a world where we're all promoting content, right? We're paying for ads. Thinking about that kind of scroll stop moment. This is a world where people are doing this the same way that you would release a trailer for a film or a poster for a film, and it's got reviews from The Guardian saying, this was absolutely fantastic. Adam Sandler was breathtaking with this film. But for a white paper, potentially, saying Gene from Accounts said this was spot on.
I'm not interested. It does make me wonder if Gene from Accounts has the same pull as I know, NME magazine, for example, but
it was time maybe Gene from Accounts was giving the opportunity.
she needs to dive into it on. But I think there's value in it. It's something that B2B, you've got to try different things. You're competing so much now. And the amount of AI tools that's spinning out and putting out content, how algorithms are working, like how do you stand out, even on social? So I think it's just interesting just to use proof. Like people love our content time and time again. That's why you should trust us.
Nice. There's one thing I'm going to take away from this conversation as a content marketer, someone who is disproportionately passionate about content. That's where I've ended up in life.
It's eliminating that invisible sigh of disappointment from the reader or the watcher or whoever it is the minute when they click on something or they fill out a form and they start scanning through it and they go, it's not what I wanted. This is annoying.
And I have to unsubscribe to that email as well now. Like, if you can get rid of that, if that's the one thing you get rid of in 2024 as a content marketer, that's really nice.
Love that.
Yeah.
Cool. Matt, absolute pleasure. Thank you very much for joining us. I think people should have a little look at Rockee, see if it fits any of those content needs we've talked about, because there's some really interesting stuff to be done there that, quite frankly, I want to play around with as an agency. So thanks very much for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.